Alright, Shalom Hebrews. This Israel been Israel for the Israelite brotherhood. This Israel been Israel for the Israelite brotherhood. And what I want to show Hebrews, that how it wasn't no Hebrews in the New Testament, and how that's still like some mysterious history to the Hebrews that's doing Jewish myths. You see what I'm saying? See, the New Testament is going to be mysterious, and you ain't going to know what's going on, and you're going to be lost, and all you're going to do is believe in it if you don't understand what happened to us and how we could not have been the New Testament people. Because if you look at our last books, that covered the exiles, and this what a lot of Hebrews don't know is that during the Babylonian Wars, it was a percentage of us taken to Babylon. 1%, they're called the good figs in the book of Jeremiah, because they trusted the Creator and that the Creator would bring them back home. And the 99% went into Africa and didn't return back home when the exiles were freed from Babylon, or from the Babylonians. And this is what the Hebrews be confused about, because they think that the exiles come back home from Babylon and that they just lived everywhere and that they just had a good old time and that everything was sweet as an apple pie till to Jesus came, and that Jesus came and he made it even sweeter, and that he died for everybody's sins and everything was just cake and ice cream. Those are myths, and that's a lie, and that lie been holding us back for a long time. And it's like this, Hebrews, you can't expect your captors to give you the truth. You can't expect your oppressors to tell you the truth on anything. On anything. How you gonna trust your oppressor to tell you the truth? And this same oppressor that's oppressing us and that been having us in captivity for these 400 years, been teaching that Jesus is the Son of God, or the Son of the Creator. And I got history to show that that's false history. Matter of fact, it was a whole bunch of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? There was a whole bunch of Jesus, and all of them lived, about the same time. And then how I got history showing that the whole biblical history has been constructed by some Babylonian scribes. The same people, some people that we abandoned our heritage to during the Assyrian times. They was placed in our land during the Assyrian times, but we abandoned our heritage to them during the Babylonian times, when the Babylonians came into the land and chased us into Africa, the 99%, and how some scribes got our history, some Babylonian scribes. I'm gonna try to get that history into us, a whole lot of history, and what's holding us back right now is the understanding of the New Testament. A lot of Hebrews think that the exiles morphed into the New Testament people, and they don't know that it was a lot of people, a lot of nations, about 12 different nations and tribes of people had settled in our land during the Assyrian times and a little bit after. Like I say, the promised land was empty for 50 years. The promised land was empty for 50 years during the Babylonian Wars. During the Babylonian Wars, you know what I'm saying? The promised land was empty for 50 years, from 588 BC to 538 BC is when the exile started to come home. But before then, it wasn't no Hebrews. No Hebrews in the land. And I'm going to show this if you go to the book of Jeremiah. If you go to the book of Jeremiah, you know what I'm saying, he going to be our last prophet for the 99%. And the 99% ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion or the Sahara religions. And we never came back up out of Africa. So you have to understand that the majority, the 99% of our people was still in Africa when the exiles come home from Babylon. Now, the people that come home from Babylon is just going to be a few thousand. It ain't going to be no millions of them. It's just going to be a few thousand. And they going to be living in the land. They going to come back to a land occupied by millions or hundreds of thousands of other people, foreigners. So when the exiles come back from Babylon, they gonna be the only Hebrews in the promised land, and they didn't live everywhere. They only lived in Jerusalem or in Judah's inheritance. And I'm gonna prove this, and this is what our history show. You see, like I say, we get our history from some Babylonian scribes, the people that we abandoned our heritage to, that's been telling lies about Hebrew heritage and Hebrew history for a long time, because they want the world to think that they are the Hebrews. You know, they want the world to think that they are the Israelites. Okay, if you go to Jeremiah 42, you see what it says. Now, this is what it says, and we was chased up off the land. And I'm going to try to go back in history and reconstruct the history all the way down to the New Testament, so it won't be no misunderstanding. Alright, you see it says, "Thus said the Elohim of hosts, the Yah of Israel, ye have seen all the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem and upon all the cities of Judah, and behold, this day they are a desolation, and no man dwelleth therein." No man dwelleth therein, meaning that it was empty. It was empty of Hebrews. It was empty of Hebrews. Either you was the 99% that ran into Africa, either you was the 99% that ran into Africa, or you was that 1% that was captured and taken to Babylon. And let's go look and see if it's in the history prophesizing these captivities and what will happen, you know, because there's got to be some prophecies behind it. And guess what? There's some prophecies behind it. If you go to the book of Isaiah, this is going to be prophet Isaiah. This is around about 725 BC. This, you know what I'm saying, this is around about 725 BC, because the prophet Isaiah covered from 739 to 701 BC. All right, if you go to chapter 6, and he explained in our captivity and what would happen to it, because remember, we had been on Egyptian religion since Jeroboam days, and we never straightened up since Solomon's death around about 931 BC. We was on Egyptian religion for a long time, and prophet Isaiah was pissed off at us, and the Creator was sending prophets, you know what I'm saying, at us, and we didn't listen to them prophets. But prophet Isaiah gonna be one of the main prophets that told us our whole, you know, everything, you know, that was gonna happen to us, you know what I'm saying, with his prophecies. And I'm gonna show you this, that he said what happened to the exiles, and how that they would be eaten up and gobbled up. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's like 137 years from 525 BC to 588 BC. 588 BC is going to be when we ran into Africa, the 99%, and when that 1% was captured and taken to Babylon. Well, Prophet Isaiah made a prophecy about this, but you know what I'm saying, before it even took place. And if you read, Isaiah chapter 6, and I'm just, it's good important to read the whole chapter, but you read this part, you should get the understanding. And just the state of man we was in. It's like I got a video showing how, the Creator said that we have ears to hear but can't hear, and eyes to see and can't see, and how the prophets verify that by saying the same things. Well, this is what happened to us. We was on that Egyptian religion, and then the prophet Isaiah, asked him how long, because the Creator had, sent him, to give us this message. And let me see, this is Isaiah 6, verse 8. Also I heard the voice of the Elohim saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert, and be healed. Then said I, Elohim, how long? And he said, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate, and the Elohim have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it shall be a tenth. That's why I call it 1%. And it shall return, and shall be eaten as a teal tree, and as an oak whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves, so the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. Okay, this prophet Isaiah is telling us our destruction and how it would go. And when he said, how long, and he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate. Okay, that happened in the book of Jeremiah. That happened in the book of Jeremiah, like 127 years later. Like I said, 127 years later, when, we was driven off the land by Ashkenazi. And it was a prophecy for Ashkenazi to come get us and drive us off the land. That's going to be the prophet Habakkuk. Habakkuk around about 625 BC. We were still messed up. The Egyptians had come in, killed King Josiah, put us on the Egyptian religion. We wouldn't come up off of it, so the Creator told Habakkuk to call Ashkenazi and the horse and bowmen. And then they came in, and then they destroyed us and chased us up off the land. Alright, if you go to Jeremiah 44, you will see, and it says, alright, this said the Elohim of hosts, the Yah of Israel, ye have seen all the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem, and upon all the cities of Judah, and behold, this day they are a desolation, and no man dwelleth therein. You see what I'm saying? So that came to pass. You know what I'm saying? That the land was desolate. And then the reason that it was desolate, if you go to Jeremiah chapter 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18, we had told the prophet Jeremiah that that we was going into Africa to live. This was during the Babylonian wars, and that them folks had finally showed up of what prophet Habakkuk had said. You know what I'm saying? And how he had called for Ashkenazi, the horse and bowman, to come in and get us, because the The Creator knew that we wouldn't change, and you know, that our eyes were shut and that we couldn't see the truth, and that how the land was on par with Sodom and Gomorrah, and how it wasn't nobody righteous in the land. Nobody righteous in the land, and how we was all messed up. Okay. So we know that, you know, what prophet Isaiah came to pass. And then if you read chapter let's go to Jeremiah 43, and this show you that we was all on our way into Africa and how the land was desolate. And all this gonna lead to show is that the millions, the 99%, had went into Africa to live, and how that 1% that was taken to Babylon, when they come back, how they only lived in Jerusalem, and how they didn't live in the other parts of our inheritance. Okay, this is the 99%. And it come to pass that when Jeremiah had made an end of speaking unto all the people all the words of the Elohim their Yah, for which the Elohim their Yah had sent him to them, even all these words, then spake Azariah the son of Hoshea, and Johanan the son of Ker, and all the proud men, saying unto Jeremiah, this speaketh falsely. The Elohim our Yah had not sent thee to say, go not into Egypt to sojourn there, but Baruch the son of Ner setteth thee on edge against us, for to deliver us into the hand of the Chaldeans, that they might put us to death and carry us away captive, you know what I'm saying, to Babylon. Alright, and then if you go to Second Kings chapter 25. Alright, I turn right to it. Alright, this everybody, all the tribes going into Africa. You know, it's like I say, I got other videos showing that it wasn't no lost tribes, no 10 lost tribes, and how this would represent all the Hebrews going into Africa, man, to live during the Babylonian wars, and how that 10th, what I call the 1%, was taken, and how they would come home and be the only Hebrews in the land around 538 BC. Alright, this is 588 BC. And all the people, both small and great, and the captain of the armies, arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldees. You know, so we never come back out of Africa when the Babylonians were defeated. When the Babylonians were defeated by the Persians, we never came back out of Africa to be reunited with that 10th or that 1% that had came home from Babylon. So, you know, who else was in the land during them times when the land was empty? But let's go back and look at Prophet Isaiah, because, you know, Prophet Isaiah prophesies the exiles' destruction. He prophesies the exiles' destruction. And the exiles were destroyed by the Greeks. You see, the Greeks were the people that beat the Persians, who were the exiles' protectors. So, you know, if the exiles were protected under the Persians, they ain't gonna be protected under the Greeks. And the Greeks come in and took the land over, and I can show how the Greeks claimed a Hebrew Israelite heritage, especially the Ptolemies and the Lichemists. I'm gonna try to walk this history down. You know what I'm saying? All right. Let's go back to Prophet Isaiah and what he said. All right. Then, them say this is Isaiah 6:11. And then said I, Elohim, how long? And he answered, until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without men, and the land be utterly desolate. All right, so I show you how that happened when we said that we was going into Africa, and how that the Creator didn't tell Prophet Jeremiah not to tell us not to go into Africa. You see what I'm saying? So the land will be empty if it's a percentage, that 10th or that 1% that's captured and taken to Babylon, and then everybody else run off into Africa. So the land will be empty 50 years. You know what I'm saying? From 588 BC to 538 BC. Alright. So, alright. And All right, and then it says, and the Elohim have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. All right, the only time that we was removed far away to where it was a great forsaking in the midst of the land is when the Babylonians came and kidnapped those free Hebrews and took them away. And then at the same time, we had told the Creator that we wasn't going to do the law and that we was going back into Africa, Egypt, to do their religion and stay. You know, we were scared of the Babylonians, as I've showed. You see what I'm saying? So let's show this here. And then you have to go to Jeremiah 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18. This show the state of mind we was in. You know, all right. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burnt incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, as for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our princes, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of food, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. That's going to be that great forsaking in the midst of the land. You know what I'm saying? While the other Hebrews was carried away. You know, we said that we wasn't going to do the law no more. All right, when we went into Africa to live, and then the Persians freed the exiles that was taken to Babylon, they gonna be that 10th. But yet in it shall be a 10th, and it shall return, and shall be eaten as a teal tree, and as a oak whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. That's the death to the exiles. You see what I'm saying? That's prophesying that the exiles will be destroyed. You know what I'm saying? First of all, a teal tree it is a lonely tree. You know what I'm saying? A teal tree, it is a lonely tree. A teal tree, it is a lonely tree. You know what I'm saying? It's a lonely tree, and it sits by itself. You see what I'm saying? It sits by itself. You know what I'm saying? It sits by itself. And if you look up the history of a teal tree, it's going to tell you that it sits alone. And you know what I'm saying? It might be an old weird place on the hillside or in a raven or somewhere isolated, and that it sits alone. And okay, that's what happened to the exiles when they come back from Babylon. You know what I'm saying? They were sitting alone. You know what I'm saying? And how they could only live in one place. You know what I'm saying? And how they could only live in one place. You know what I'm saying? I got the history of that is in the Tanakh. Everything about us is in the Tanakh history. And if you go to the book of, I believe that's going to be Nehemiah. That's going to be the prophet Nehemiah. And then that's going to be chapter 11. All right, as I show you that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes, and that how all the tribes, you know, I got in the other videos, how all the tribes was around during King Hezekiah time, and how everybody was around King Josiah time, and how all the tribes was around during Jeremiah time, and how when the Babylonians came, we all ran into Africa, the 99%, when the little 1% was kidnapped and taken to Babylon, and how they was freed by the Persians. Okay, and when they come home, this, you know, everybody, Israel is mentioned throughout Nehemiah and throughout Ezra, you know, and then I can show where the prophet Ezekiel made us one. made us one. Made us one in Babylon by those 12 sticks that he hold up. You know, I pray I can get a little of that history in, but this is the exiles, that tent, that like a teal tree, that tent that came back, that was isolated all by themselves. Let me see. And the rulers of the people dwelt in Jerusalem. The rest of the people also cast lots to bring one of 10 to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city, and 9 parts to dwell in other cities. And the people blessed all the men that willingly offered themselves to dwell at Jerusalem. Now these are the chief of the province that dwell in Jerusalem, but in the cities of Judah dwelled everyone in his possession in the cities, to wit Israel, the priests and the Levites and the Nethinims and the children of Solomon's servants. You see, so everybody had to live in Judah inheritance when they came home from Babylon. You know what I'm saying? That's like this over here. You know, 11:20 says, and the residue of Israel of the priests and the Levites were in the cities of Judah, everyone in his inheritance. So we would live in the cities of Judah because that would be the only place, you know, we could stay, because while we was gone into Africa, all these people moved in, and some more people. But if you go to Ezra chapter 4, and then you get over here to chapter 4 verse 9, and you'll see it say, Rehum and the counselor and Shimi the scribe and the rest of their companions, the Danites, the Aphichiphites, the Tarpelites, the Arsaphites, the Achivites, the Babylonians, the Sushanites, the Devites, and the Edomites. You know, all them nations had moved, you know, and the rest of the nations whom the great and noble Asaph brought over and set in the cities of Samaria, and the rest that were on this side of the river and such. You know, it was a lot of people in the land, and also we never drove out them Kenite tribes. We never drove out all the Kenite tribes from Judges all the way to the time that we was destroyed. You know, all the way from the time that we was destroyed, we never drove them out. So those people will still be in the promised land along with these people right here too. You know, if you go to 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 24, and this is in 722 BC when these folks was placed. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuddar and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So, you know, them people, you know, especially the Sepharvaims, that's going to be the Sephardi Jews. You know, them the people, them the Babylonian scribes that constructed the whole biblical history after we ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, abandoning our heritage to them. You know, all right, all these people were still in the promised land when we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. You know, and all those folks were still there in the promised land when the exiles come back from Babylon. You know, like I say, the exiles were only a small percentage, a 1% or a tenth, you know what I'm saying, of our people. And that wasn't nothing compared, you know, to what we were before, you know, our trouble started. So when they come back from Babylon, and they could only live in a certain part of our territory, and that's Judah. So what I'm trying to construct and show is that by the time that Jesus was born, that it wouldn't be no Hebrews in the land. Like I say, that the exiles could only stay in Judah inheritance, and then I got history to show where they had mortgaged their land, they had to sell it for food, and that how the exiles were slaves when they come home, and how they got wiped out so fast. You know, if you read the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, they gonna show you how the exiles got destroyed so fast because, you know, the exiles was mixing and starting to pass out heritage over they were starting to pass the heritage over to the enemies in the land. You know, we had enemies that were still in the land, like I've showed, you know, that all those folks were still in the land. And all them people were still in the land, and how they got rid of the exiles when the Greeks come in, because Malachi gonna be the last book around 430 BC. You know, if you read the rest of the prophet books, you know, especially Ezra, he gonna tell you how they mixed so bad. Man, how they was mixing, and how that they had to take a census and had to make a proclamation throughout the little land with the people that, you know, that they should stop mixing with them other people, and how that they took a vow to separate themselves. Okay, that didn't happen long, and he even said, in 3 days, if you don't show up here at this temple and at this spot, then your name gonna be knocked off, and we ain't gonna recognize you as a Hebrew. Well, we're gonna know that, you know, the folks probably didn't show up, but the ones that did show up made a vow to change, and he sealed their names, you know, took a list. And then he took a list of all the chief people that had mixed with the other folks, and then even had kids by them. So, you know, that heritage had to be cut off, because the exiles were passing the heritage over to the enemies. So, you know, something had to happen to end that. And that's why the prophet Isaiah said that they will be eaten as a teal tree. All right, but yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, those are the Hebrews from Babylon, and shall be eaten as a teal tree, and as a oak whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. So the exiles gonna get destroyed by the Greeks, you know. And the book of Malachi gonna be the last book. And in the book of Malachi, I could tell you what each book talk about. And Ezra, he gonna tell you how they was mixing real bad, and how they couldn't, you know, stop, and how that was a big problem. All right, the book of Haggai gonna tell you, he gonna say he don't even know, you know what I'm saying, why they still on the land, how bad that they was doing. And then he showed you that we was still up under covenant, you know what I'm saying, that we were still up under the covenant law. The exiles were still up under the covenant law, where they couldn't mix. You know, the exiles couldn't mix. You know what I'm saying? They couldn't mix and pass the heritage over to the enemies. You know what I'm saying? They couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. So, you know, that's going to be one of the reasons why the Greeks come in. You know, the Greeks going to come in, and they going to fix all that. They going to fix all that mixing and kicking it with the enemies, because they going to destroy the exiles. And then the exiles got destroyed so fast that we didn't have no scribes recording that after the Greeks come in. After the book of Malachi, it was over with. You know what I'm saying? It was over with, and how we didn't have no scribes no priests to keep recording their history. And the people that we abandoned our history to, the Babylonian scribes, didn't record the exiles being destroyed. You know, this is what the prophet Haggai said. According to the word that I covenant with you when you come out of Egypt, so my spirit remain among you, fear ye not. You know what I'm saying? This was around about 520 BC. They was messed up, but they wasn't supposed to mate with the people in the land. You know what I'm saying? And then if you go to Ezra, I think it's Ezra 9. Ezra 9. You're gonna see that that was a big problem. No, it's not Ezra 9. Alright, Ezra 9. Alright. When these things were done, and the princes came to me, saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the land, doing according to their abominations, even the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. You know, then them took their daughters and they sons and started to mix. So, you know, that's why the creator, you know, the last book are going to be Malachi. And you're going to see how we was so messed up in the mind, how we was bringing blind sheep and cattle to the temple for sacrifices, donating them to the temple, animals that we couldn't sell and stuff, and how Prophet Malachi said that the priesthood was taken away and that how it was over. Okay, 98 years later, the Greeks show up. The Greeks gonna show up. The Greeks gonna show up 98 years later, and then you get the Greek pharaohs. You know what I'm saying? You get the Greek pharaohs. You know what I'm saying? The Ptolemies. Man, you get the Ptolemies. You get the Ptolemies, and that's like when Jesus went to Egypt. When he was a kid and a baby, that's all he would have seen was statues of the Ptolemies and the other Greek Roman folks. You know, it's like Alexander's generals, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, and them took, you know, Alexander Empire over. And what's important to note is that Alexander had a general. Alexander had a bodyguard in a general named Lycimus dynasty. Man, the Lycimus would be high priests in the promised land. Man, the Lycimus would be high priests in the promised land, and how, you know, the Lycimus were Alexander's the Great's bodyguards, you know what I'm saying, and his generals, and how they carved his empire up. Well, one of the Lycimus, the head one, married the Ptolemies, and then from the Ptolemies and the Lycimus mixing, you get Philo at the end. How about Lycimus is gonna be Philo's great grandfather, and this is where Philo's roots go to. And Philo was one of the biggest, strongest, powerfulest Jew during the Roman times. You know what I'm saying? And he was born in 20 BC and died in 50 BC. And how when Jesus went to Egypt, how Jesus would have went to his schools that Philo founded, and how I got videos showing you how those Egyptian, Alexandrian, Greek schools sent, you know, them organizations out to get the people in the Discopolis, you know, because the Scythians had settled in the Discopolis. Now, I already showed how the other folks had been in our land since, you know, the Assyrian in the Persian times. But what we don't fail to realize is that it was some more people placed in our land. It was some more people placed in our land. And guess who was placed in our land? None other than Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi was set in our land under the name Scythian. You see, the Scythians made up the Chaldean army. Ashkenazi made up the Chaldean army under the name Scythian. You know, and this is what a lot of Hebrews history don't, you know, include. You know, you don't include no real history. Well, Ashkenazi, the Scythians that chased us into Africa during the Babylonian Wars. Ashkenazi code name in history is Scythian. You know, Ashkenazi code name in history is Scythian, and Ashkenazi settled in the Discopolis after the Babylonian Wars in what's called Beth Shan. You know, Ashkenazi settled in Beth Shan, and they stayed there the whole time. And that was Discopolis cities, man, consisted of. You know, that's what the Discopolis cities consisted of. And Jesus gonna kick it in the Discopolis cities the whole time. And that's what his whole membership, and that's what his whole preaching and his whole dealings with the New Testament is gonna be in the Discopolis cities. Man, among in the head Discopolis city, it is gonna be Scythopolis. Scythopolis is gonna be the only Discopolis city that was on the right side of the Jordan, on the book side, what I call, because from Bethel to Jerusalem and Samaria, we're gonna have books in them places. You know what I'm saying? And then I got proof showing that the Scythians settled in Scythopolis. You know, there goes Scythopolis right there. You know, there goes Scythopolis right there. Scythopolis right there. That's where the Scythians settled at. After the Babylonian wars, after they chased us into Africa, that's going to be Ashkenazi. And they going to settle in the whole Discopolis area. And that's going to include Galilee too. You see? And them going to be the people that was there when the exiles come back home from Babylon. And the reason why the exiles couldn't stay in the other part of our inheritance is because the Scythians, Ashkenazi, stayed in the other parts. So, you know, we're going to know that Ashkenazi made up the Chaldean army under the name Scythian, and that they was responsible for burning the temple down and chasing the people into Africa. Okay, the exiles would come home under Persian protection. You see what I'm saying? It didn't last long because the exiles sinned. Like I said in the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, the exiles sin would cause the Greeks to show up. And then, you know, that would be the end of Hebrew history. And like I said, the Babylonian scribes didn't record the exiles' destruction because they want you to think that the Tanakh history is a continuous history on over into New Testament time, but it's impossible because it's a 500-year difference, because the book of Malachi gonna close 430 BC. You don't get no more history meaning about the so-called Bible until the New Testament history pop up, and that's gonna be around 90 AD. You know, that's gonna be around about 90 AD when the New Testament history pop up. And when the New Testament history pop up, you know what I'm saying, it's gonna talk about the enemies. But you know, those people in the New Testament had used the Old Testament genealogy, because when we had ran into Africa, we had abandoned everything. We had abandoned our books. We had abandoned our books. We had abandoned our books. We had abandoned everything. So the enemies would get the genealogy list, and then they would add themselves onto it. You see what I'm saying? They would add themselves onto it. And they would say that they was Israelites. But the exiles were destroyed. They got destroyed within the about 100-year span. They got knocked off so fast, and how it was impossible for the exiles to have made it over into the New Testament times is because, you know, during 20 BC, the Edomite man constructed his temple. You know what I'm saying? And this not a temple that's refurbished. This is a temple that was built from the ground up in 20 BC. in 20 BC, and it was destroyed in what's that, 70 AD, and then that's when those Jews gonna run across North Africa into Spain. You see what I'm saying? But that's like, her temple, was destroyed, and this was so cold, Hebrews, that a lot of you Hebrews don't know that it was this dude named Philo, and Philo was in Egypt. And Philo controlled Egypt and what is called Jewish history and Judaism. He put it down on what's accepted as Judaism, so-called, supposed to made it portable and so forth. And he was the intellectual of that time. And how about Jesus went to Egypt when Philo controlled Egypt? When Philo was in control of Egypt, because Philo died in 50 AD. You know what I'm saying? Philo died in 50 AD, and that Edomite temple would be destroyed in 70 AD. But being that Philo was the powerhouse in the intellectual, and how he didn't dispute or have no protest about her building an Edomite temple and not saying nothing, and how Jesus went to Egypt, and how he come back and prayed in that Edomite temple, and how, they didn't have no knowledge of that the Edomites wasn't supposed to be in control of the land. You know what I'm saying? And how, I could show you that it was a whole bunch of Jesuses, and that each one of those Jesus represent the Jesus history in the Bible, that they combined all those Jesuses right there, and they made it into one history. You know what I'm saying? They made it into one history. Okay, the New Testament ain't gonna be no Hebrews. Ain't gonna be no Hebrews in the New Testament, because the exiles were destroyed, and exiles could only live in Jerusalem, as I showed. And I got history showing that they got wiped out so fast when the Greeks come in. And then I can also show that if you read in the book of Ezra, how the enemy was in the temple. Man, they had made the enemy was in the temple, and then got the temple, and then built them a little spot up in there, and how they was just doing everything backwards, and how the exiles couldn't pass heritage over to the enemies that was still in our land. You know what I'm saying? And they couldn't do it. They couldn't pass heritage over to the enemies that was in our land, and how the exiles was so messed up. If you read this right here, all right. Behold, we are servants. This is Nehemiah 9:36. Behold, we are servants this day, and for the land that thou givest us, our fathers, to eat the fruit thereof and the good thereof. Behold, we are servants in it, and it yield much increase unto the kings whom thou hast set over us because of our sins. And also they have dominion over our bodies and over our cattle, and at their pleasure we are in great distress. Okay, when did that change? When did that change? When did that change? That never changed. That never changed. That never changed. And then the devil was in the temple. You know what I'm saying? The devils was in the temple. You know what I'm saying? If you go to Nehemiah chapter 13, he gonna tell you how Elisheba, one of the priests, had prepared, you know what I'm saying, a chamber in the court of the house of Yah for Tobiah, who was a Amorite Moabite. You see what I'm saying? And how he gave him a spot in the temple. So, the exiles was so messed up, and that how they had to be destroyed, because, we couldn't have no two covenants, and we couldn't have no people in the promised land doing the covenant while we in Africa not doing the covenant. It's going to be one or the other, because the curses had to be activated. The curses had to be activated for the Hebrews that had ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. So if the curses had to be activated for them, then that means that the exiles, something was going to have to happen to them. And what happened to the exiles is that the Greeks come in and destroy them real fast. That little tenth that just only could live in Jerusalem and in the cities of Judah got knocked off so fast. If you read Ezra, Nehemiah, you'll see how that they were struggling and how the enemies was more making them mortgage the land for food. And you best believe they didn't get that land back after they mortgaged. They didn't get that land back. And how they was in just great distress. Okay, they got knocked off. The Greeks come in, got them, killed them real quickly, filleted them, got them just like the prophet Isaiah said, that tent that'll be destroyed like a teal tree, and whose oak is when they cast their leaves, so the holy seed should be the substance thereof. Well, that's what happened to the exiles. They got knocked off real fast, and only us that ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion remain, because we broke the covenant and got curses to do. So, that's why slavery started for us and we was taken to the Americas. But there's no Jesus in the New Testament. There's no Jesus in the New Testament. And I got videos explaining how Jesus, had Edomite members. You know what I'm saying? If you go to Mark 3:8, Jesus had Edomite members. So, it's impossible for Jesus, to be a Hebrew or somebody of importance having Edomite members and stuff. And we know how the Creator put an oracle out against Edom and how Edom would take our land and stuff. But if you go to Mark 3, verse 8, and it says, and from Jerusalem and from Edom, that's the Edomites, and from beyond Jordan, them the Edomites, and they about tried and Sidon a great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, come unto him. You see what I'm saying? And them was his members. Them was his members and stuff. And Jesus had Edomite members. And then I show you that Jesus was only sent to the Scythians that had settled in the Discopolis city. Whenever you read in the New Testament history, you're going to see that he was in the Discopolis the whole time, or in Galilee. You know what I'm saying? Which is right next to the Discopolis, and how he was sent to educate Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi had 380 synagogues. That's like when you Hebrews be saying, those are the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not. And then look misty-eyed like you done said something real slick. Like that verse is talking about the Jews are not the real people. Well, Jesus wrote that is because it was a whole bunch of synagogues in the promised land, and he taught in them, and some of those synagogues wasn't in agreement with him or his teachings. You see what I'm saying? They wasn't in agreement with him or his teachings. And how, some of them, wanted to get him. I think that's, let's see Mark 1:14. 14. Yeah, well, that ain't it. But anyway, Jesus, was teaching in some of them synagogues, and some of them folks, they wasn't down with it, and they didn't want his teachings and his healings, and like I show in some of the videos about the New Testament, how Jesus' members, the Scythians, had a weed smoking culture. So the history that you get about the New Testament is in question off the top, because they smoked the weed in the Discopolis cities, and in the Scythians that settled in Scythopolis, and that controlled the Discopolis city, because Scythopolis was the head capital of the rest of the Discopolis cities, and how they all smoked their weed. So Jesus, whole story is is twisted, and it wasn't no Hebrews in the New Testament, because the exiles from Babylon got destroyed and didn't make it over into New Testament time. You know, the exiles from Babylon was never exposed to a demigod, or was told to worship a demigod, or told to believe that a God's son was coming to save them. You know, they wasn't that messed up. They was messed up, but they wasn't that messed up. And how did this story about Jesus came later on, and it was fashioned later on? That's like the first Christians gonna be in the Discopolis city among Ashkenazi, because they sent Jesus out to convert and change those Ashkenazi Scythians that had settled in the Discopolis. Well, Ashkenazi took control of the whole Jesus history and flipped it on them and turned them into a god, and controlled the whole world. And they used the Christianity and the other religions for proxy wars, because the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi Jews been at war on the slick through proxy, trying to take control of our heritage and keep control of the Hebrew heritage. And that's what the whole thing has been about. And how that Ashkenazi took the whole Jesus history also, and which Pella, one of the Discopolis cities, were where they first start worshiping Jesus as a God's son. Some of you Hebrews think that it was at the Council of Nicaea in 332 AD, but it wasn't. It was in Pella, in the Discopolis cities, is where they first started worshiping Jesus as a God's son, and then they developed their history. Man, I show you that it was a whole bunch of Jesuses. You know what I'm saying? That it was a whole bunch of Jesuses. You know, Jesus been the Nath, Jesus been Stoddard, Jesus been Gamaliel, Jesus been Atrak. You know, it was a bunch of Jesus, and how they combined all their history and made them one. You know, how they combined all the Jesus history and made them into one. It's what they did. And how we Hebrews pick up any information and run with it. And run with it. But this is what I also want to show Hebrews. This will show enough. Show you that it wasn't no Hebrews in the New Testament. It's because this dude right here, Tigernus the Great. Tigernus the Great took over 10,000 Jews to Armenia in 95 to 55 BC. Now this 55 years before Jesus was born. It's like a sample of the population of Judea was taken. And he didn't just say, hey, y'all black ones stay and you white ones come. He grabbed anybody that he could and he took them to Armenia. And guess what? None of them was black. None of them was black. And you ain't finna find no black culture extending from the people that Tigernus the Great took from Jerusalem in 55 BC. You ain't gonna find it. And look where Armenia is to the promised land. See, he took them and he marched them right up here. Right up there. You see that? You see what that say? You see what that say? Armenia. That's where he took them. He took them from there. He marched them. He marched them from there, all the way up there. Over 10,000, and they settled. And they would build an empire. They would build an empire that would control the whole Europe later, all the way to Greece, Turkey, and everywhere. You know, the empire that them Jews built in Armenia, that Tigernus the Great took, built the empire all in Europe, and then they connected with their folks in Spain, and they had trade routes all over, everywhere, even into Africa. And them folks there wasn't no black culture, wasn't no black folks. And you ain't finna go find no black culture extending from that. And them was like a sample of the population taken from the promised land and took into Armenia, and wasn't none of them black. Wasn't none of them black. So, you know, they killed that New Testament right there. And I already showed that the Scythians settled in the promised land. They settled in the promised land in the whole Discopolis city. They in the whole Discopolis in Galilee. And then I showed how the exiles could only live in Jerusalem, in Judah inheritance. And then if you read the book of Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, you're going to see that those exiles sinned so bad that, you know, that's what caused the Greeks to come in and destroy the Persians. You know what I'm saying? And it's like Cyrus and all them that had freed us. Ashkenazi got them, cut their head off and made their body parts on horses and stuff. And that was because the exiles was sinning so bad that the people who protected them didn't have no power. They already, you know, wasn't us. And then when we start sinning and the Creator calls for the other folks to come in, the Greeks come in. And the Greeks destroyed the exiles. That would be the end of Hebrew history around by 332 BC. That's why you able to get the Lycimus, and the Seleucids, and all those folks claiming the Israelite heritage. Something had to happen to the exiles. Something had to happen to the exiles in order for the Greeks to start claiming an Israelite heritage. And I show you how we couldn't mix with the people that was in the land, and how that was a problem. How that was a problem with the prophets Ezra, Nehemiah, and how that they was against the Hebrews mixing. And then, you know, these folks show up. And then when them folks show up, it was over with. You know, them folks show up. You know, then they show up. The Platonians. And them was the Greeks. Them was the Greeks. And them gonna be the people that got rid of the exiles. Them gonna be the people that got rid of the exiles. Them gonna be the people that got rid of the exiles, while the 99% in Africa waiting on the transatlantic slave trade. And how the exiles couldn't mix with those folks. You know what I'm saying? How we couldn't mix with those people. How we couldn't mix with them. We could not mix with them. And when them Greeks, you know, it ain't nothing but history of how the Greeks and the Jews mixed together, and how the Jews went to Greece and to Europe and lived and prospered and everything, and how they held control and had a good time. You know what I'm saying? And then I show the Lycimus, that's going to be Alexander's bodyguards. You see what I'm saying? And how that they would, you know, be high priests in the promised land. Now, why would the Hebrews, the exiles, let her build a temple, let the Greeks come in and claim an Israelite heritage? Some of them get taken from the promised land to Armenia. Ain't none of them black. It's by 10 different Jesuses. And then Ashkenazi settled in the whole promised land that the rest of the tribes would have been settled. Ashkenazi settled there, and how Ashkenazi was responsible for chasing us into Africa under the name Chaldean. You see, you Hebrews ain't thinking about none of that. Ain't none of that on your history radar. And then to top it off, you ain't never thought, well, dang, the slave owners gave us Jesus, and how we didn't come from Africa knowing anything about Jesus, and how Jesus was beaten to us. Even, you know what I'm saying, we so crazy, we'll change Jesus' name into Yawashi and still push that evil religion that was given to us in the slavery days. You know what I'm saying? We all messed up. We all messed up. But it's the people, it's the Hebrews that's believing in them secondary gods and them demigods that's holding us up. That's holding the Hebrew struggle up and keeping us from coming into the power that we supposed to have. Is going to be them New Testament Hebrews that believe in the God's Son and going to believe in the New Testament history and don't even know the history. And don't even know the history about the Testament. Not one time have a Hebrew say, let me go see who was in the Discopolis city. Let me go see who was these peoples. You see, half the Hebrews don't even know. No, you Hebrews don't even know that the exiles' history was cut off and that how it was a prophecy from prophet Isaiah that the exiles would be destroyed. You see what I'm saying? You Hebrews don't know that. And you Hebrews don't know this because you be believing in Jewish history. That's like if you believe in that 70 AD lie, then they done already tricked you into believing in the New Testament. You see what I'm saying? If you believe in that in that 70 AD saying that the Hebrews left because her Edomite temple was destroyed and ran across North Africa into Spain, then you know you gonna believe in the New Testament because you believe in that. And that's a myth. That's a myth that them Jews created. It wasn't no Hebrew Israelites in the New Testament. You know, the Greeks got rid of the exiles around about 332 BC, and that's why the Lycimas and the Ptolemies were able to claim an Israelite heritage, and how Philo later on in Alexandria created those schools and would send them his pupils like Jesus, who was a parable king, a parable scribe, and would send them on the people in the Discopolis city, and how that's what their history is about. And it's not about Jesus saving no Hebrews are coming to change the world and save everybody and create a new mission for the Hebrews. That's false history, and you've been tricked. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. It wasn't no Hebrews in the New Testament. 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 Shalom.